This year, 2020, has been a strange year for all of us, but it's been a very strange year for our guest today. This lady is a nurse who has been neck deep in ministering to COVID patients, and in the midst of her exhausting schedule, she found she had gained 30 pounds and gone from non-diabetic to diabetic over the course of just a few months. As soon as I heard just a little of her story, I knew I had to share it with you. Before we get to our program, I want to announce that Beat Diabetes Tuesdays are back. From now on until the end of the year, I am planning on posting videos early Tuesday mornings as well as Friday mornings as usual. So be on the lookout on Tuesday morning for another edition of Beat Diabetes. Well, folks, I am so happy to have with us on Beat Diabetes today by a Zoom conference, a wonderful lady by the name of April Harkness. April is a nurse, and she's been deeply involved in ministering to the COVID patients. And so, April, welcome to Beat Diabetes, and thank you for being one of the 2020 heroes.
Oh, thank you.
You have a powerful story to tell. You shared just a brief paragraph about what happened with you as you basically ate yourself into diabetes and then found the answers and got out of it again. But let's start with your weight. You've always been a slim person. You've never been overweight until this COVID thing hit. What was your normal weight for most of your years?
I mean, it would range anywhere from, 108 to, 130. It would depend on what sport I was doing, because I've been athletic. If I was a power lifter, I'd get up to 130, and if I was doing, kettlebells, I would be in the, 115s to the 120s. So, depending on off season, on season, but usually never above 130 ever. Yeah. But most of the time, I would really stay between 115, 125.
Okay. And you're around 5'3".
Mm-hmm. And pre-COVID, I was 112.
Pre-COVID, you were 112. So you were basically at one of the lower levels of weight that you had been in some time.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So the problem began with the good intentions of some companies who were donating food to the nurse. Everybody has been loving and appreciating the nurses. We've seen the people, out their windows just cheering nurses as they go to the hospital to work. And I remember hearing about a donut company that said, we're donating as many donuts as these doctors and nurses can eat. And I thought, well, that's probably not exactly the best thing. But that kind of happened with you, didn't it?
Yes. When I started working in the COVID tents, we had a lot of companies and well-meaning individuals that would donate donuts and muffins, not just every week, every day, to the COVID tents. And we got deep dish pizza every single day for lunch and for dinner, subs. Yeah. And because I worked nonstop from March until June with no days off, that was my meals. That's what I was eating every single day.
Now, we need to establish that before all of this, you didn't eat like that at all, right?
No, I was keto carnivore. I was OMAD.
So just the opposite, you had, but somehow you justified the idea of switching. I guess you thought it was a temporary thing to the muffins, the donuts, and the pizza.
Yes, and because I used to be former military, but during, these times in the tent, I felt lots of camaraderie with my fellow nurses, and we would bond over these donuts and bond over pizza. And that was like the camaraderie. I sort of I missed that when I was in the military, and I was getting that with my coworkers. It was just over really bad food.
Right. So this was This was quite an experience. It was different than anything you'd ever been through. You're working long hours. You're developing kind of a bonding with a lot of the nurses. You're seeing more of them than normal. You're eating a lot of junk, eating a lot of muffins, eating a lot of donuts and pizza and so forth. And there were a couple of different signals that your body wasn't really responding too well to that. One was you started gaining weight. Tell us about that. And the other was your blood pressure started going up. So talk about how that developed over the months from about, I guess, March through June of this year.
Well, in March, it was really hard to, before COVID, I was really strict with my eating regimen. I had a, schedule, but when COVID hit, that was off the table. I like having regimented, structured, ways of eating and exercise. And soon the gyms were closed. I wasn't eating at the times I usually ate or not eating. Spending 12 hours in those tents was really stressful. And I would spend 12 hours in an N95, not those surgical masks. When people talk about surgical masks, oh, I can't breathe in those, try an N95. And I'd have like 1 hour off to take that mask off. And I dealt with the stress by eating the pizza. And I thought to myself, you know what? I was keto carnivore. I'm sure that I'm going to keep looking like this, right? One pizza is not going to hurt me. But the thing is, one pizza did hurt me because that one pizza led to more pizzas for every single lunch. And once that pizza hit my mouth, I just couldn't stop eating. There were some days when we had so much pizza given to the tents, we could each take a pizza home.
So eat a pizza at work and then take another one home.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And pretty soon, I started to gain fat in my abdomen area. And we all know that that's dangerous. And at first I chalked it up to, it's temporary, it's transient. It's just the water from the extra carbs I'm eating. It'll go away. But it did not. It stuck around. But soon, I was putting so much into my patients and my work that I I stopped caring about myself. And I was just laser focused on caring for patients, not caring for myself. That's another thing that sometimes I heard pre-COVID, people would talk about, nurses that are fat. And it's not that they're lazy. They're not lazy. They're just caring so much about other people. They just stopped caring about themselves. Yeah. And that's what I did.
It kind of reminds me of when you're on the airplane and they tell you if there's no oxygen and the masks fall down, first, get your mouth covered so then you can help your child or anybody next to you that needs help. Mm-hmm. You weren't doing that. You were focused on them. How did your weight progress? You started out very slim at 112, around 5'3", actually almost skinny. Mm-hmm. Over those months, what kind of numbers did you get on your scale?
Well, there was 1 week where I gained 10 pounds.
1 week?
1 week I put 10 pounds on. And I said, oh my gosh, I said, there must be something wrong with me. Yeah, there was something wrong with me. My insulin was shooting up really high. And I went to the doctor and the doctor took my blood pressure and my blood pressure was 130, almost 140, like 138 over 90. But the doctor said, oh, you know what? You're just stressed. Don't worry about it. But my blood pressure has always been actually really low. My blood pressure has usually been, 90s to 60s. That's my norm. And I feel fine because I've always had doctors and nurses taking my blood pressure say, do you feel faint? No, that's my norm, right? Because my insulin I was keto carnivore. My insulin was always low. Thus my blood pressure was low. But this time I was really scared. And that made me think that maybe I had some metabolic damage that was occurring.
Yeah. And you had an advantage that most of us don't have, and that is as a nurse, you had an A1C machine that was right there in your office. You could take it anytime you wanted. And at some point you got nervous enough to say, hey, I wonder what's going on with my A1C, with my blood sugar levels these days. And you tested yourself. What did you discover?
Well, before that I had tested my blood sugar on a glucose monitor and it was like 211 and I'm not diabetic. So I said, wow, I said 211. and I said, I have to, get my A1C tested, and I had that machine right in my office. I had actually asked my doctor to do it. She didn't do it because I was still at a normal BMI. But the thing is, I was at the normal end of the normal BMI of 24.9, and obese category is 25. And sometimes you have to just advocate for yourself. But even though, that's normal for, a normal 44-year-old woman, it wasn't normal for me because just 4 months ago I was 112 and I was at a low BMI. So that scared me, as well as that blood glucose reading. So I did the A1C machine. I'm thinking, maybe I'm, 6.0. And then I saw and I said, oh my goodness, I'm 6.7. That's diabetic.
Yeah, absolutely. You had crossed over the boundary from non-diabetic to diabetic, and it's not like you took years and years. Like many people, in their 20s, it creeps up a little bit. They get it through their 30s and 40s, and finally in their 50s, they're over 6.5, which is the standard for being diabetic. You did it in a few months.
Yes, I mean, I thought I would just have pre-diabetic numbers. Still not good, but like pre-diabetic numbers. So I was shocked to see 6.7. That truly scared me. And I know, as a person of Asian descent, we can actually develop diabetes at a lower body fat and a lower BMI than others, than Caucasians and African Americans. So this really brought that fact right home to me, that I was not a snowflake. In fact, I was not just at risk. I had diabetes at that point.
Yeah. Now, you had a couple of advantages that a lot of people don't have. Number one, you had the A1C machine that you could test yourself, when you were concerned. And number two, you had roots that went back to keto diet. You were not a novice. A lot of people, they get diagnosed and they're like, what do I do? And they're all over YouTube and wondering which way to go. You pretty much knew which way to go, didn't you?
Yes. So, I had all these tools in my toolbox. I had shut it during COVID, when they called me to the tents, I shut it. But I was lucky in a way that, unlike other people, they search for years trying to find their path out of metabolic damage. I knew what to do. So I pulled out keto. I couldn't go back to carnivore. It was just too hard. 4 straight months of eating poison. It was hard to jump from that to carnivore. So I said, I'm going to go back to keto. And I went back to fasting, but I could no longer do OMAD. It was too hard. So I did modified alternate day fasting.
Yeah. Let me pick up on the word poison you just used, 4 months of eating poison, you said. In my opinion, the two greatest poisons that Americans ingest are sugar and white flour. And when you started ticking off the foods that you were, the snacks that were being given to you and the foods that were being donated to all the nurses, they were all loaded with sugar and white flour. The muffins, the donuts, the pizza, and all the stuff is all white flour and lots of sugar. It's, in my mind, it wasn't too much of a wonder. But anyway, you understood that. You realized that this is a problem. You went to the alternate day fasting. You call it a modified alternate day fasting. Explain how you modified it at first and how that worked out for you.
So from modified alternate day fasting, one day I did 3 meals, and then the next day I did 1 meal. And for my 3 meals, I kept that keto because I love my vegetables. And then 1 meal I did carnivore, because when I did carnivore a couple months before COVID, I had been in the best shape of my life. So I wanted to see if I could, do both. So keto, 3 meals a day. Then the next day was 1 carnivore meal. And I did that for 30 days.
Okay, so how did that work out for you? Did you lose weight? Your blood sugar numbers started coming down?
Well, at the end of 30 days, I was actually disappointed that I only lost 5 pounds on that. I thought I would lose more because, heck, a couple years ago when I did 16-8, I lost like 10 pounds in a month. And now I was doing something much more hardcore than that. And I only lost 5 pounds. But I think when I did 16-8, maybe when I first started that, it was a couple years ago, I was more athletic, I was younger, and I was not metabolically damaged when I did that. This time I had damaged myself. I was not working out like I used to. And now I'm premenopausal and I needed something more. And I happened to read Dr. Jason Fung and Jimmy Moore's book, The Complete Book of Fasting. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try to do true alternate day fasting. And I even threw in 2 extended fasts too. And that worked. So with the alternate day fasting, it was true alternate day fasting. I ate one day, didn't eat one day, ate one day, didn't eat one day. And then I also threw in 45-hour fasts.
Yeah, well, it reminds me of a little illustration I sometimes use. If you're driving your car down the road and you're going 20 miles an hour and you want to go faster than that, then you push the gas pedal down, the accelerator, and you give it more gas, so you'll go faster. In your case, you did the modified alternate day fast and it wasn't really doing it for you. You pushed the gas pedal down a little harder and it really made a difference. What kind of results did you get at the end of 30 days of doing that stricter alternate day fasting?
18 pounds gone with minimal exercise. The most exercise I did during that was I did mostly body weight with some really, really short. I made 2 days a week of running really short. I kept things light, and it was also to prove to myself that I had to concentrate on what I was putting in my mouth or not putting in my mouth. That's where I had to concentrate on. And 18 pounds were gone.
Yeah. So you lost a lot of weight. I'm sure were encouraged at that point. You waited a while, and just toward the end of the period where I think you wanted to go about 3 months and then do another A1C test, which is wise. You contacted me. You said, I'm about to take another A1C test. I expect it'll be a lot better this time. I was intrigued by your story. And I said, well, let me know, when you get it done. I said, I'd love to interview you. And I didn't know, a lot of ladies are a little leery. I don't know, for some reason, they're not as willing to be interviewed as men, it seems like. But anyway, you were eager. And so you sent me back an email. You said, I just tested myself, and tell us what you got on this latest test. It was a couple of days ago, right?
Yes, I think it was 2 days ago. I tested my A1C and it was 4.8.
4.8, which is tremendous. I stress to the people that I minister to and try to help, if you can get into the 5s, you're doing really well. And I try not to push it much harder than that, because some of these people, it's a huge struggle just to get to the 5s, and it's like 4s would be ideal, sure, but you got there, and you must have been really happy about that.
No, I was. Even before this happened, I've never had an A1C that good, but it truly is a testimony to the powers of fasting. And that, there's a fasting regimen for everyone. For me, after going through 4 months of eating such garbage and seeing how much metabolic damage I was doing to myself, I needed to do an extended fast. I needed this particular dosage to get me healthy again. I fear for some of the coworkers that I worked with that are walking around with this metabolic damage that they don't know about. Maybe they won't find out for months or years, and until they experience, other problems. Lucky for me, I already knew the signs, like my blood pressure. That was my first sign that something was wrong. A lot of people might chalk that up to salt, but I knew it was my insulin. I knew it.
Yeah. Like I said, you had some advantages some people don't have. And the thing that, really is scary is you weren't the only nurse that was, overeating on all this junk food. All your nurses were. If we take that at one local hospital in Chicago and multiply it across the entire United States and perhaps even in other countries, there's probably a number of nurses with metabolic damage as a result of just eating the foods that are donated to them. And people think, well, we want to help these nurses, which is great, but they ought to be giving them fish and salad, not these high sugar carb foods.
Exactly. I mean, I think there was one time that we got donated a box of tuna in those cheese wisps. The crackers just made of cheese.
Yeah.
Right. one time, and barely anyone touched that box because, you know, it's right next to the cupcakes. Why would you touch tuna? I did, because I'm like, you know what? When I go back to keto, I'm going to use these tuna packets, which I did not long ago. I made a tuna salad, but I wish people donated steak instead of this, or, you know, donate to your local food bank instead of donating to us. So I am just lucky that I found out about my A1C sooner and didn't keep walking around accumulating this damage. And it was like, I had worked so hard for patients. Like I said, I forgot about taking care of myself. And it took looking at that A1C to go back to keto and go back to fasting and go back to training. If I hadn't got that A1C and hadn't checked it, I would probably still be eating sugar, still eating muffins, cakes, cookies, pizzas.
Well, April, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story, and we hopefully there are a lot of nurses and doctors maybe watching, as well as ordinary folks that need to hear this. This COVID has hit us in many different ways, and many people have changed their diets for the worse, not for the better, under these situations. Thank you so much for sharing. Any final words for anybody that's struggling with metabolic problems these days?
You know, sugar, grains are poison, but low carb and fasting is the cure. And don't forget, nurses, doctors out there, other healthcare providers, medical assistants, nurses' aides. It's important that we stay healthy for our patients. We can only give the best care to our patients if we first take care of ourselves.
Amen to that. Wow, what an amazing story. April Harkness literally ate herself into diabetes and then fasted herself right out of diabetes. And the bottom line is this: you don't have to be a nurse eating donated muffins and donuts to experience this. Anyone who makes white flour and highly sugared foods a major portion of their diet is at risk for weight gain, high blood pressure, and diabetes. In short, serious metabolic syndrome. I thank God for April and how she was able to reverse her diabetes, and I pray that her story can touch many of you, our viewers, and motivate you to do the right thing. Give up eating that garbage and take your health seriously. The health and the life that you save will be your own.